Chapter 6, Love and Loving Relationships. In this chapter, love means different things to different people. Caring, intimacy, commitment are important components of love. So this chapter examines the meaning of romance and love, why people love, the positive and negative aspects of love, and how love changes over time. We'll also look at some cross-cultural variations in people's attitudes about love. Now, love is an essential human component of survival as both an emotion and a behavior. So it's really essential to our human survival. And it is within the family that we find our most earliest and most important source of love and emotional support. So first, let's compare self-love, friendship, and love. First of all, self-love. Erich Fromm, a social philosopher in 1956, he viewed self-love or love for oneself as essential for our social and emotional development. And he viewed it as a prerequisite for loving others. Self-love is an important basis for our own self-esteem. If we like ourselves, we're more open to criticism and less demanding of others. Those who do not like themselves, well, they'll constantly be in search or seek relationships that will boost their poor self-image. Friendship, friends are very important. These are the people who we care about. They're the people we can count on, who we enjoy interacting with. And studies show that friends have a really big effect on our physical, social, and psychological health. Often a bigger impact than our family members. People with strong friendships experience less stress. They're happier because friends offer that emotional support and that physical assistance when we need that. There were some recent national surveys in both the US and Canada, and even in Europe, where they found that the larger number of friends in real life, this isn't the number of friends we have on our social media accounts, the real life friends, and the more frequently we see them, the happier we are. Some Americans report having only very few close friends, and those friendships usually last over a lifetime. Those Facebook friends, those online friends, they don't increase our happiness or satisfaction with life, as studies show. Now, if we consider both friendship and love, can we really love someone who we don't like? So sociologist Keith Davis identified these 8 qualities of friendship. And love includes all of these plus 3 additional qualities, which we'll talk about in a minute. So enjoyment, friends enjoy being with each other most of the time. Acceptance, our friends accept each other the way they are. We don't try to change each other. We trust our friends, we put trust in them and we look out for each other. Respect is an important factor or quality. Friends respect each other's judgment, even if we don't necessarily always agree with it. We respect it. There's that mutual support. Friends help and support each other, expecting nothing in return. Confiding in each other, friends share experiences. Confiding in one another about those experiences, about those feelings. Friends understand each other without worrying about being judged. Friends sympathize about what those feelings might be and those thoughts are. And honesty. Friends are open and honest with one another, feeling free to be themselves, be comfortable in each other's company. Now, love includes all of those qualities. In addition, there are 3 additional qualities. Includes all of those plus it includes sexual desire, a priority of that relationship over any other relationship, and then caring to the point of great self-sacrifice. So a relationship can often start out as a friendship and then build up with these additional qualities. But it's not likely that we can really love someone who we don't consider to be our friend. Oftentimes you'll hear people who are in love say that that person is their best friend. Here we have a depiction of a family's love. This love is more than just the love between two people. It's, you know, the love of family, the love of a parent with their children, siblings, pets. You know, there are all kinds of love. That's what we're going to talk about next. Everyone has experienced love and believes that they know what it is. However, there is really no universally accepted definition of love. Affectionate feelings can change. Acceptable expressions of love vary across time and across culture. And there are different types of love. So what are some of those characteristics of love? All types of love are multifaceted, based on respect, and they're often demanding. So for example, parental love is strong and deep. You know, adolescents and adults experience romantic love that tends to be often short-lived. And many married couples, even gay lesbian partners, experience sometimes long-term love. So there's a variety of this type of love. The fact that love is multifaceted, it has many dimensions, and it can be romantic, it can be exciting, it can be obsessive, and it can also be irrational. It can also be platonic, which means it's non-sexual, calming, and altruistic, which means it's very selfless, and it can also be practical. Love does not have a single definition because it varies. It varies in degree, it varies in intensity, and it varies within the social context. So at the very least, love includes caring, intimacy, and commitment. Three things we're going to talk about at greater length in a minute. But first, love is based on respect. It may involve passionate yearning, but respect is more important. If the relationship does not have respect, then it isn't based in love. Without respect for one another, it is instead an unhealthy or possessive feeling or behavior that really has limitations on our social, emotional, and intellectual growth. I also mentioned that love is demanding and it can be unromantic. We get these unrealistic images about love in the movies, in TV, and in romance novels. That long-term love, especially, is thrilling and exciting, and there's great sex all the time. When in actuality, love is usually very demanding, very unromantic. The daily grind, those mundane, everyday tasks are usually not very romantic or sexy. So why? Why are we attracted to some people and not attracted to others? What attracts people to each other? It's very romantic to believe that everyone has, this one true love, when in fact, it is cultural norms and values that actually bring us together, not fate, not Cupid drawing that arrow and shooting that arrow at someone and bringing us together. We're never going to meet also hundreds of potential lovers because typically they're all filtered for us out by, they're filtered by our formal or even informal rules based on some variables, some sociological variables. Age, for example, race, social class and religion, a person's sexual orientation, even health and physical appearance. Starting as young children, our parents indirectly encourage or limit future romances by living in certain neighborhoods, by selecting certain schools for us. And when we reach adolescence or even the preteen years, our peers, our friends start to influence those romantic experiences. Now, if you remember, like in 7th grade, who do you like? Who do you like? And who don't you like? And so those crushes, start happening at that early age. No matter what, we learn through criticism or through approval who is acceptable to have a relationship with and who is not. All societies, including the US, have rules of what are known as homogamy and rules of heterogamy. Now, these two terms you want to be familiar with. Homogamy means dating and marrying within one's group. Heterogamy, the opposite, dating and marrying outside of an acceptable group. So dating within one's group, within similar age, within the same religion, within the same social class, within the same race and ethnicity. And some families have strongly emphasized some of these characteristics. We're moving towards a much more common to be dating and marrying outside of that group, maybe marrying someone of a different religion or someone of a different race or ethnicity. And so, we're starting to see that. And, again, dating outside of a particular group, you don't date somebody in your own immediate family. I think we talked about that earlier on in the semester as well. These are taboos that we talked about, cultural taboos. And the next thing we're going to talk about is these common terms of caring, intimacy, and commitment. Some reasons people fall in love are that they're physically attracted to each other, they have shared interests, they're seeking companionship. Basically, they want to have some fun. So in any type of love, caring about the other person is essential. When we love someone, we want to help. We want to help them. We want to support them. We want to provide that emotional support. This is called caring. You see a lot of that going on right now. This means we value that person. We value a person's welfare and well-being as much as our own. When we care, we respond to the other person's needs. When we don't see evidence of this, there's no caring involved, there's no support given, we really begin to doubt that partners, whether or not they love us. Now, this doesn't mean we should just go out and, act helpless to see if a partner, give them that test of whether or not they care. But when people care about each other, they really bolster each other's self-confidence and offer encouragement where there are, when there are problems, especially, to give that support. They become sensitive to each other's needs, allowing for that relationship to become more intimate. Now, with intimacy, definitions vary, but all seem to include an emphasis on feelings of closeness. Research on couples show that when they experience intimacy, they share a mutual interest, this emotional interest in each other. They have some sort of history together. They have a distinct sense of identity as a couple, and they hold a reciprocal commitment to a continued relationship. They want to maintain and continue the relationship, and they share hopes and dreams of a common future. So other research points to these three kinds of intimacy: physical, affective, and verbal. The least important is the physical, but physical would include things like, sex and hugging and touching, that physical type of intimacy. If affective is that feeling of being close. It's not always a physical closeness, but feeling a closeness even when you're apart from that person. It's that level of intimacy. And then verbal involves what we call a concept called self-disclosure. And self-disclosure is the opening up to reveal thoughts and feelings to another with the expectation that they will return that communication. So offering that honest, thoughtful feelings, opening up to that another person, hoping that they will truly open up to you as well. When relationships are intimate, partners feel free to express these innermost feelings, their weaknesses, their insecurities, their hopes and dreams, and not having a fear of being judged, being ridiculed, or even rejected. And because we feel we can trust and respect, there's those two words again, trust and respect the other person, lovers will feel free to reveal their innermost thoughts. And so there's a certain level of comfort in that relationship. We also may, share our frustrations and even our disappointments. However, you want to leave nagging out of the equation. Nagging should never be a part of the self-disclosure. This can actually decrease the level of intimacy because it implies one person is superior to the other. And when you're nagging about something, I did this, correct. I loaded the dishwasher correctly. You did it wrong. Instead of being grateful that the dishwasher was in fact just loaded. So we want to leave nagging out of that self-disclosure. More than the relationship between two adults, intimacy includes other bonds, like there are bonds between children and parents, and children and step-parents, children and grandparents, those sorts of relationships as well. Both mothers and fathers, intimate bonds with children is equally important, although research typically emphasizes mothers' intimacy with their children. Research on fathers shows that they play a critical role in their child's development. It boosts a child's self-esteem, their emotional stability, a willingness to avoid the experimentation with drugs and other risk-taking behavior. So studies on fathers, reading to their children has really shown even improvement in a child's, again, self-esteem and willingness to be more social and, developing that quality time with fathers. In adult relationships, when people open up to one another, they let their guard down and they really relax in each other's company. And so intimacy tends to increase in those moments. When caring and intimacy are present, commitment often results. Now, commitment is a person's intent to remain in a relationship and work through problems. Marriage being the ultimate commitment. Mutual commitment typically results from some of the following. Having a sense of loyalty and fidelity to one's partner. The second is a religious, legal, or moral belief in the sanctity of marriage. Also having this continued optimism about future rewards, things like emotional rewards, financial rewards, even sexual rewards later in that committed relationship. And lastly, having strong emotional attachments to that other person. Now, many people will end their relationships if they feel this mutual commitment is not increasing, even if they still love each other. Commitment in a healthy relationship provides each partner with affection, companionship, and trust. During the times of great stress, kind of like what we're under now, and day-to-day responsibilities, committed partners are there for each other. Committed partners will persevere through these tough times, any tough times for that matter. So even when tempted to stray, being a part of that committed relationship will prevent that from occurring. Commitment is demonstrated through actions, not just words, not just flowers and candy and hearts and actions, speaking louder than words. Couples secure in their relationships repeatedly show each other their commitment to one another by giving support, trusting each other, showing an interest in one another, and being dependable, that dependability. Now, we have, next thing we're going to talk about in this chapter are some theories about love and loving. And we have 6 theoretical perspectives to cover here to explain love. The biological explanations will focus on why we love. The psychological, sociological, and even the anthropological theories focus on the how we love in addition to the why. So first, the biochemistry of love. From the biological perspective, love is grounded in evolution, in biology, in chemistry. According to biologists and some psychologists, romance serves an evolutionary purpose by bringing men and women together into long-term partnerships that are essential for child rearing. For example, if you think about the hunters and gatherers, one parent cared for children while the other parent was able to go out and hunt for food. With the onset with technology and MRIs, magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, these were used to study brain activity. Researchers found that hormones, those chemicals and neurotransmitters, the chemical messages in our brain, affect each other, creating the state of what we call love. So this euphoria that we feel when we fall in love, this comes from dopamine. And dopamine is a stimulant that's released in the brain when we're doing something that's pleasurable. Norepinephrine is another stimulant that's released that can produce sleeplessness, but also elation. Oxytocin promotes trust and safety and positivity. So in the beginning stages of emotional attachment, we see those sorts of chemicals being released in our brains. As our level of attachment grows, endorphins take over, and these sort of relax the mind, eliminate pain, and reduce anxiety. Biologists say this explains why those in long-term relationships say they feel very comfortable and very secure. When we lose someone we love, like through a traumatic breakup, brain images and blood tests show increased levels of stress. Hormones are then released, and this often results in chest pains, anxiety attacks, even heart attacks. And this is where we get the expression, your heart is broken. You literally feel as though your heart is breaking when something like this happens. So there is definitely a physical explanation for why you feel the way you feel if you lose someone or if you break up with someone traumatically. Now, these are the sort of biological explanations about how love occurs. Now we're going to move on to the more sociological. The sociological perspectives look at culture and claim that culture plays a real role in forming our love relationships. Sociologists argue that, and some psychologists, that culture, not chemicals, plays this role. The best known social science theories are next. The attachment theory is the first we'll talk about. And attachment theory proposes that infants develop a relationship with at least one primary caregiver, usually the mother, for this normal social and emotional development. John Bowlby is a British psychiatrist who says that attachment is an integral part of human behavior from birth to death. Both adults and children benefit from having someone look after them, someone who cares about our well-being, who provides for our basic emotional, physical needs, and is available when needed. Mary Ainsworth an American psychologist and former student of Bowlby's, conducted a study where she tested women, mothers and infants in their attachments. And she did this in both lab settings and in natural settings. And she created a mild stress for an infant by having the mother temporarily leave the baby with a friendly stranger in an unfamiliar room. When the mother returned, Ainsworth noted that the infant's and the mother's reactions, and she commented on what those reactions were to each other. And so she identified 3 infant-mother attachment styles. 60% of the infants with sensitive and responsive mothers were in what she called secure attachment, or the secure style. They showed some distress when left with a stranger, but went back to playing after the mother returned. About 20% of the infants were very anxious or ambivalent in their attachment when the mothers were inconsistent, sometimes affectionate, sometimes distant. The infants showed distress at separation, but rejected their mothers, really didn't care when they returned. So that was a sort of ambivalent, anxious style of attachment. And again, about 20% of the infants displayed avoidant behavior. Their caregivers had ignored their physical and emotional needs, and they ignored their mother when she returned. Now, some of this research is criticized for being conducted in the lab and not a natural setting, and also for not identifying any cross-cultural or any other type of rearing practices. Nonetheless, research proposes that adult intimate relationships reflect many of these attachment styles. So it carries over again into adulthood. Now, feminists argue that attachment theory and research ignore the fathers and their bonding and fails to really account for any kind of social class differences, any inequality in power between men and women as well, and this influence of this attachment style. So that is what is known as attachment theory. The next theory we'll go over is Ries's wheel theory of love. According to sociologist Ira Ries, there are 4 stages of love: rapport, self-revelation, mutual dependency, and personality need fulfillment. And he compared these stages of love to the spokes on a wheel. So stage 1, the rapport stage, is based on culturally similar upbringings, similar social class, similar religious background, educational level. So according to Ries, without this rapport, would-be lovers don't have enough in common to develop initial interest in one another. So connecting this understanding of each other's feelings, and they can communicate well. Stage 2, self-revelation, brings the couple closer together. So as each person feels more at ease in the relationship, they're more likely to reveal more intimate and personal feelings. In stage 3 is mutual dependency. And this increases the couple, as mutual dependency increases, the couple becomes more intimate, sharing ideas, their hopes, their dreams, their fears. Stage 4 is when the couple experiences personality need fulfillment. Each partner confides in the other, they make mutual decisions, they support each other's ambitions, and boost each other's self-confidence. So these stages can turn, thus the likeness of the wheel, turn, and it can be repeated. The wheel may turn to develop a deep, lasting relationship, or the wheel could stop after a few turns. In the case of maybe a shorter romance, the romantic wheel can also unwind. If there is any arguments or lack of self-disclosure or any kind of conflicting interests. Sociologist Dolores Borland modified this theory, stating that love relationships are more like clock springs, where they can wind and wind and wind over time, but then during times of stress and tension, it can be wound up too tightly. If the couple communicate and work toward a common goal, it could actually bring them closer together. Or on the other hand, if they are wound too tight, one might feel smothered or even threatened by increasing unwanted intimacy. So critics of this theory, wheel theory, or even the clock spring theory, argue these theories do not recognize any kind of variations in the intensity between stages of a relationship. People who love each other may have varying levels of intensity, feeling high on one dimension, rapport, for example, and then low on another, maybe the personality, need, fulfillment. So again, there's, again, critics of the theory. So let's think of another theory. And here's just a diagram of the wheel theory of love. Next theory is Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love. And so instead of stages, psychologist Robert Sternberg states that love has three important components. The first is intimacy, the second is passion, and the third is decision / commitment. Intimacy includes feelings of closeness, connectedness, and bonding. Passion, which leads to romance, physical attraction, sexual consummation, is the second component. Third component, decision, commitment, has dimensions, which has a short and long-term dimension. So in the short term, the couple makes a decision to love each other. In the long term, the couple commits to maintaining that love over time. The mix of intimacy, passion, and commitment, according to Sternberg, vary from one relationship to another. These range from non-love, where all three of those components are absent, or consummate love, where all of the elements are present. The components, when all present, also vary in intensity and over time for each partner. So Sternberg, viewed the components as forming a triangle, and the greater the mismatch on these dimensions, the greater dissatisfaction in the relationship. And here we have a figure that displays this, these triangles, and how if we were to overlay, if each of us has our own triangle, and we try to overlay our triangles with each other, sometimes they're perfectly matched, sometimes they're close, but maybe not quite, moderately mismatched, and some become severely mismatched, and that would, again, how closely related are our triangles with each other. Many counselors use this theory to kind of counsel couples, helping them recognize that love is more than, one component, more than passion, which can be fleeting, and there would be less disappointment and fewer unfulfilled expectations. And so, got a lot of couples counselors will use this theory. And again, here we see, in romantic love, intimacy and passion are strong component. In companionate love, we have intimacy and commitment. In foolish love, there's passion and commitment. We're committed because based on passion, which can be very fleeting. But in complete love, all three components, intimacy, passion, and commitment, are there. Now, here we have Lee's styles of loving. And this is developed by Canadian sociologist John Lee. This is the most widely cited and studied theories of love. I've seen this these styles quoted a lot of different times. According to Lee, there are 6 basic stages of loving: eros, mania, ludus, storge, agape, and pragma. And all may overlap and vary in intensity. So I'm going to flip next. Here we have a table. Sort of gives you the meaning and then the major characteristics, which I'm going to go over. Eros, the root of the word erotic, means love of beauty, and it's characterized by powerful physical attraction. That's that love at first sight kind of love. The love of romantic novels is this. Erotic lovers experience intense desire for each other, want to know everything that the other person, what the other person is about. They want to do the same things. They want to wear the same things. That's the eros, erotic kind of love. Now, mania means obsessive love, and it is characterized by jealousy and possessiveness and intense dependency. Because manic lovers fear rejection by the desired person, they often experience a lot of anxiety, sleeplessness, loss of appetite, headaches, and even have maybe some suicidal tendencies. Manics are consumed by thoughts of their object of desire, and they have intense need for attention and signs of affection. Mania is often associated with low self-esteem and poor self-concept in the individual. The next is ludus, and ludic love, it means playful love. It's the carefree, casual, fun and games approach to love. Ludic lovers often have several partners at one time. They're not jealous or possessive. There's really no emotional connection in the ludic style of love. They're typically self-centered. They may be exploited because they don't want commitment, so they may exploit the relationship. That's a ludic style. Storge means companionate love. It is a very peaceful, affectionate love that really comes and develops over time. It's based on mutual trust and respect. There's those words again. There are feelings of tenderness, deep affection, and support over time. The goals are marriage, home, and children in storge. Steady relationships without the highs and lows of the other styles of love. So even if storgic lovers break up, they likely remain friends, replacing any kind of passion with spirituality, respect, and contentment with one another. So there's still that mutual affection, trust, and respect. Agape. This is an altruistic love. This is the love that is self-sacrificing and kind and patient. This love is directed toward all of humankind. It is a love that's not jealous or demanding. It does not seek any sort of reciprocity, so nothing in return for the love that's given. So nothing, you're not expecting anything in return. This type of person may wait indefinitely for someone. Like if somebody was either in prison or an alcoholic or a drug addict, they would love that person so much so that they would wait for them to come out of jail, to get over their addiction, and they could feel like they can help them recover from that. So it can be very tricky kind of love to be involved in that sort of self-sacrificing kind of way. Pragma, pragmatic, practical love. It is a sensible, realistic, rational love based on practical considerations. So a pragmatic person seeks compatibility, characteristics. They're looking for, what is their background? What is their level of education? What are their religious views? Occupational interest and recreation. So this is the kind of person that sets up that checklist. And does this person meet all the items on my checklist? So if one person doesn't fit the list, they move on to the next person. So pragmatic lovers look out for their partner. They're very encouraging of them. They're also very practical when it comes to divorce. Staying together until the kids are grown, or until both partners can really support themselves on their own. So again, very practical, even if the relationship ends. So that's Lee's style. 6 styles. Exchange theory. This is, love is often referred to as a social exchange process by social scientists. Romantic and long-term love relationships involve social exchanges in the sense that they provide rewards and costs for each partner. So a relationship will continue if the initial interactions are satisfying to both parties and they're reciprocal. If the needs are mismatched or change over time, the love interest may shift or decline from adolescence into later life. So if we look at love during adolescence, exchange theory explains why romantic love is short-lived among adolescents. This love is intense, but it's also very self-centered because adolescents are still discovering who they are. They're often, forming relationships with peers who offer more benefits than costs. Now, love during adulthood, as we start to mature, our perceptions of rewards and costs usually change. So we think more about nurturing a relationship with someone who is patient and kind and self-confident, rather than someone who is good-looking and fun-loving, and but also could be controlling and self-centered. And then love during later life, we also again weigh the costs and benefits of love as we age and enter our senior years. So if we look at it differs between men and women. Men over age 60 might prefer younger women who are more interesting, more attractive, and can become caregivers as age increases. While older women, on the other hand, would be more likely than male counterparts to be interested in more financial stability in their later years. The next thing we're going to talk about are the functions of love and loving. Love fulfills many functions, ranging from ensuring our human survival, enhancing our physical health and emotional health, and also for having fun. A number of researchers and family practitioners believe that love is at the core of healthy and well-functioning relationships and families. Now, love keeps the human species going. It implies commitment. Love implies commitment, and by promoting an interest in caring for helpless infants, love ensures the survival of the human species. Love doesn't guarantee that people will live to be 100, but research shows that there's a link between loving relationships and better health. Love enhances our physical and emotional health. Research shows a connection between people's emotions and their physical and emotional well-being. Babies and children deprived of love may develop problems like depression, headaches, psychological impairments, psychosomatic issues. These are issues of the mind and the body, and these sometimes can last a lifetime. However, infants who are loved and cuddled typically gain more weight, they cry less, and they smile more. Studies show that as we get older, being in loving relationships enhances our health. The more serious and enjoyable the relationship, the lower the likelihood of beginning, continuing, or escalating any sort of substance abuse. In adulthood, experiencing chronic stress results in higher blood pressure, whether it be due to work demands or coming from an unloving home life. People who are stressed face the higher risk of heart disease and other illnesses, sort of, weakened immune systems. Our friends, our family, and loving relationships over a lifetime can help counterbalance those stresses and that wear and tear that we face as we age. And also, love is fun. Now, there are definite times that love can be painful. Anyone who has had their heart broken can attest to this. But love is also very exciting and very fun. The excitement of planning and meeting up with someone, the exchange of email and now text messages and gifts and waiting for that phone call, those surprises, shared activities, someone to depend on, someone to cheer you up when you're feeling down. Now, there is a myth that love just happens, that love at first sight, that Cupid pulling that arrow and that one person is going to, it's just going to happen overnight. The reality is that love takes time and effort to develop. It doesn't appear out of nowhere. It does, take work on both parts. Next, we're going to look at some differences that people experience when it comes to love. Differences between men and women, and then some obstacles to love as well. So, are men more romantic than women, or are women more romantic than men? Several studies have found that men seem to fall in love faster than women. They're more likely than women to say that they are in love, and are more likely to initiate romantic email exchanges, and are almost as likely as women to prefer romance. Men can be very romantic. Now, women often complain that men do not want to commit, even if they profess their love. They criticize men for being commitment phobic. But romance and commitment are different. We have to remember that. Men can be very romantic, but they do not necessarily see love leading to marriage. So, are women or men more intimate? Women complain about a lack of intimacy because men don't usually communicate their feelings. For men, sex is the same as emotional closeness or intimacy. Women want to feel close in order to be intimate, and men think that being close is the same as being intimate. Women like to talk about things. Men like to do things. And even if men and women show affection differently, there are more similarities than differences in the attitudes towards love. Women and men are not really from Mars and Venus. They just express love differently. And if we use women's definitions of loving and showing affection, the feminization of love, it creates a bias, and men don't get credit for the ways that they express love and their feelings. Next, what are some obstacles to experiencing love? There are a number of obstacles. Some are at the macro level and some are at the micro level. Macro level, like the impersonality of mass society and some demographic factors, age, income, occupation, things like that. And also cultural emphasis on individualism. And then there are some micro level characteristics like personality and family characteristics. So first, mass society, the increase in technology like texting and email and Snapchat and Facebook and Twitter and all those things show an actual decrease in opportunities for face-to-face interaction. It dehumanizes any of our interpersonal communication. So in response, there's a love industry that has developed. So for example, computerized matchmaking, internet chat rooms. Singles bars and self-help books tell us we can find love, yet it is typically through family and friends and work-school relationships that most singles end up meeting up. Also, economic issues affect our romantic lives. For example, job insecurity, unemployment, underemployment, jobs being below our educational skill level. These kind of transform relationships. Men who are in low-paying jobs can't afford to spend a lot of money on dates. They're unwilling to commit and feel insecure if their partner makes more than them. And they have, to support them financially, and so it feels emasculating. So being in debt can really crush a relationship. Some of the demographics like age and income and occupation really shape our love experiences, because older men tend to marry younger women. Older women are faced with a shortage of eligible partners. And women who are financially independent, no matter what age, may be the ones less likely to commit to a relationship. Again, we have that, me first individualism. In addition, society today has placed an emphasis on individualism and competition rather than on community and cooperation. So this emphasis on individualism leaves us preoccupied with ourselves. When we're only looking out for ourselves and only doing what feels good in the moment, we're, without thinking of others, we're left not being able to handle difficult or demanding situations that might arise, like how to care for our partner if they get sick, if they, lose their job, or some other crisis might occur. The messages we receive that focus on self-improvement are often at the expense of our partner, the relationship, even with family members. We get messages in the media that focusing on the short term, fun, fleeting relationship rather than the long-term commitment. So those messages that we're getting, it's not fun and you're not happy, life's too short, get out now while you still can. And the more micro level, the personal, family, personality, family characteristics, these are obstacles sometimes. We may be initially attracted to someone based on physical chemistry, but it's personality and feelings and interests that helps keep us together. If there are two very different personalities, one very outgoing and one very shy, things may not work out. Also, family members and close friends can put a damper on relationships sometimes if they disapprove. Many people also, especially women, say that they're afraid to fall in love if they had parents who went through a divorce, particularly if it was a bad divorce. Despite the difficulties, couples can overcome and still develop loving relationships if they're determined to do so. All right, now we're going to talk about, when love goes wrong. And we're going to talk about, as we mentioned earlier, self-love can leave us open to love, but it can also lead to some other behaviors. Things like narcissism and jealousy and controlling behavior, and something called unrequited love. Jealousy, trying to control love. That's, regardless of age. People experience jealousy when they believe that a rival is competing for a lover's affection. The jealous person feels, threatened and is very suspicious, obsessive, angry, and very resentful. So why are lovers jealous? Well, jealousy is an unhealthy expression of insecurity, low self-confidence, and even possessiveness. The opposite of how we know in a healthy expression or that love is based on trust and respect. Jealous people tend to depend heavily on their partners for their own self-esteem. They consider themselves inadequate as partners and believe that they are more deeply involved in the relationship than their partner is. In some cases, people who are jealous will not trust a partner because of their own cheating. Other times, jealousy is triggered by, real, or it can also be triggered by imagined rivalries. Jealous lovers often insist that their jealousy proves their love. But in reality, jealousy is both hostile, destructive, and not a healthy expression of love. So, are women or men more jealous? Well, the jury's still out on this question. Evolutionary psychologists say jealousy developed 1 million or so years ago. Men were worried about, infidelity, fear of raising someone else's child. Women, on the other hand, were more concerned with their partner's emotional rather than any kind of sexual entanglements. So women, much more concerned with emotional attachment rather than sexual export. So according to this evolutionary psychologist, men are 2 times as likely as women to report jealousy over their partner's sexual infidelity. Now, this approach has been criticized because of its reliance on, sample of college students who are not really representative of the larger population. And when researchers asked adults about their actual experiences, they actually found that both men and women, either heterosexual or gay, were more jealous of emotional than sexual infidelity. That emotional infidelity was much more concerning. And there may be 2 reasons for this. Number one, they often blame themselves. Did I not satisfy him or her? And secondly, emotional affairs are viewed as being more threatening because it could develop into something more long-term, a more long-term relationship. Now, jealousy is, shows a means to try to control someone. And jealousy and stalking are really serious issues. Stalking involves a pattern of harassment or threatening tactics that's used by a perpetrator. Excuse me. And it causes fear or emotional distress in the victim. By the mid-1990s, all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories passed anti-stalking laws. So state laws vary, but typically they include things like unwanted phone calls, letters or email, following, watching or spying on a victim. So by using, listening devices, camera, GPS, even approaching or showing up at a person's home, workplace, school, any of that unwanted behavior. Cyber stalking is a more specific type of stalking. And this is threatening behavior or unwanted advances using email and texting and the social networking sites like Facebook and any other electronic communication devices. About 60% of cyber stalking victims are women. So the question becomes, is jealousy universal? It is not. It is not universal. The research indicates that jealousy is more common in societies where women are regarded as property, and expressing jealousy is culturally acceptable. It is not, however, universal or innate, or something that's inborn. It's been shown in movies like Fatal Attraction. Someone very jealous and dramatized in the case of this particular movie in 1987. Other controlling behavior. Jealousy is not the only type of unhealthy behavior in intimate relationships. Threatening to withdraw love or causing guilty feelings can also be very distressing. Inflicting severe emotional and physical abuse can be especially devastating. The "if you loved me," threatening to withdraw, and manipulating someone, controlling someone by saying, "if you love me, you would do this or you wouldn't do this." Controlling people want power over others, and so they'll threaten to withdraw their love in order to manipulate behaviors, using pressure and ultimatums. Controllers can force their partners or family members to give up their own interest to please that controller. They may use a variety of strategies to control, often switching strategies to even throw the person off balance. Guilt trips are used to justify behavior that usually has nothing to do with love. Some parents use this strategy, such as, withdrawing love and guilt to control a child's behavior, giving them that tough love. So behavioral control is one way. It's usually direct and has some positive effects like high academic achievement and staying out of trouble. Psychological control, this is more manipulative and more covert. It can have negative consequences like, adolescents who sacrifice their interests to satisfy their parents, and that parent-child relationship will suffer. Guilt trips continue into adulthood. Older parents and relatives use guilt to manipulate older children. This is an affection myth that children are taught that love is synonymous with caregiving. So children and grandchildren may be taught that regardless of their own circumstances, they must care for elderly family members and endure enormous stress, even though relatives would get better care if they're at a good quality nursing home. So a lot of older relatives will say, "No, I want to stay in my own home and have someone take care of you," when it puts a lot of pressure on the caregiver. In the case of married couples as well, or those cohabitating, guilt is used as a sense of obligation. So it's very emotional, in terms of, call it emotional blackmail, more so than actual love. If you love me, you take care of me, is the idea. The emotional and physical abuse, people often use love to justify severe emotional or physical neglect and abuse. A partner who is sarcastic or controlling, a parent who severely spanks or verbally humiliates a child. This is not love. Even though they insist they are doing it for their own good. They're simply being, angry and brutal. Violence is never a manifestation of love. Family violence gives children the wrong message that it is, there's no distinction between love and violence. And, they grow up believing it's okay to hit the people that you love. That's why there's always that controversy around, spanking. And, some families have a strong, belief that spanking, spare the rod, spoil the child. There's an old expression. But then, research indicates that connection between, I'm doing this because I love you, might carry over into adult behaviors. Other controlling behavior. Think of other perverse reasons for love. People will say they love someone because they're afraid to be alone, or they might be coping with changes. They might stay in a bad relationship for fear of the partner's hostility after if they break up. And in many cases, people don't want to hurt someone's feelings by admitting that they don't love them. They may feel obligated, especially if it's a marriage, to stay, even if the love has decreased over the years. So they sort of stay out of obligation. Now, romantic love in the United States in the 1800s was less common than it is today because, number one, life expectancy was shorter. Number two, living in isolated towns and homes made it very difficult to meet a variety of lovers. And number three, most people didn't live long enough to fall in love more than once. Today, with increased life expectancy, greater geographic mobility, and high divorce rates, we fall in love with many people during our lifetimes. In comparison, romantic love can be both exciting and disappointing, while long-term love provides security and constancy. So let's talk about some characteristics of romantic love. Romantic love is usually very passionate, exhilarating, and it can be a wonderful experience. Lovers find it impossible to do anything without thinking about each other. Moods tend to fluctuate wildly. There's some high when you're really in love and low when you're not. People find it impossible that they can ever fall in love again. We fantasize about our partner. How will we declare that love for each other? They also care about each other in a way that nothing else matters. And then lastly, they idealize each other. We tend to think that, there's love is blind and nobody else can see what you see in each other, in this person. Romantic love is very intense, very emotional, and it's sometimes very melodramatic. I can't live without this person. Of course you can, but it's just that feeling, that how dramatic it can feel. It can also be very self-absorbed and self-serving, enhancing one's own self-esteem rather than being interested in the partner. Oh, this person makes me feel good because they love me, they're romancing me. So romance sort of thrives on that love at first sight, fate idea. Let's talk about that next. Love at first sight. Americans believe in love at first sight. Because that's how it's portrayed to us in the movies, in romance novels, on TV. Strangers falling in love, the moment they set eyes on each other. And we're promised that, you'll feel that chemistry, even though, online dating sites exist. We've Tinder and the, Match.com type sites. Fate, many of us believe that fate and destiny bring us together, and they're a really important part of romantic love. That there's a soulmate out there for each one of us. However, fate has little to do with it. Romantic love is a product of similar social class, physical attractiveness, and a need for that intimacy with that particular person at that particular time and place. So we want to look at love in long-term relationships. Romance is simply a stepping stone, to this love. It draws people together, but it can also fizzle out after the first few months or years of passion have worn out. So some characteristics of romantic love and long-term love kind of overlap, and we're going to see that in a table in the next slide in a minute. Characteristics like trust and understanding and honesty sort of overlap between romantic love and this long-term relationship love. But then there are some differences, the differences between romantic and long-term love. Romantic love is effortless and short-lived compared to lasting love, which is very demanding. It takes much less work, to plan a romantic evening than it does to be patient with a partner day after day, year after year. Romantic love is often very self-centered, whereas long-term love is altruistic, that selfless kind of love. Lasting love requires putting your partner before yourself, and making them feel very cherished. Romance is short-lived because love changes over time. Flaws that were cute when you first, met the person and during that romance, they might become unbearable, a year after the wedding. Gestures of love differ in romance. These are outward expressions, such as flowers and gifts and, romantic dinners. In the long term, these gestures become less materialistic and less tangible. Long-term love grows and develops, in contrast to short-term romantic love. Companionate love is more characteristic of the long-term relationships compared to the passionate game playing in romantic love. Those who are happiest describe their love as companionate and committed. And finally, demographic variables help to maintain that long-term relationship. For example, what I mean by this is our socioeconomic status is associated with long-term relationships, because having enough income to be out of poverty can alleviate financial problems and reduce stress. So money may not be able to buy love, but when there is a lack of income, a lack of money, it can put a lot of stress on a relationship. So a lot of financial issues often put a strain on couples. And here is the table I referred to. The difference, where we see a commonality. So in this table, on the left-hand side, these are the characteristics that are unique to love. Taking those romantic walks, candlelight trysts, going out for dinner, picnics and sunsets, and playfulness and physical attraction. Loss of sleep thinking about the person. Unique to romance. Unique to long-term love is that patience, independence, putting the other person before yourself, having that possibility of marriage and, making the other person feel wanted. What is common in both romance and long-term is that trust and caring, communication, honesty, friendship, respect, understanding, having fun together, passion, but more intense in romantic love than it would be in the long term. So just some, various characteristics. Okay, now we're going to briefly go over love across cultures. From one culture to another, definitely talk about culture and sociology. The meaning and expression of love will vary from culture to culture. In Western societies, where there is an emphasis on free choice and individualism, love is a legitimate reason for dating, living together, getting married, or getting a divorce. In other cultures where the community and group is stressed, arrangements between families are much more important than romantic love. So first we have romantic love. And in the early colonies, you remember we were talked about the history of the family. In the early colonies, marriage was considered to be too important to be based on love. Politics, economics, those things were more important. It was only in the early 20th century that people came to expect marriage to be based on love, sexual attraction, and personal fulfillment. It's a relatively new thing. Romantic love is almost a universal because it exists in at least close to 90% of societies. In societies where kin ties are more important than individual relationships, romance is the least important. In India, for example, Valentine's Day has been targeted as being offensive to Indian culture. And some radical groups have actually tried to disrupt businesses that sell gifts and cards for Valentine's Day. So definitely some cultural differences. In Japan, expressing love and affection is very uncommon, especially among men who rarely see their wives and children. Companies pressure men in Japan to put their jobs first and to demonstrate their loyalty by working very long hours. In fact, a man founded the Devoted Husband organized to show appreciation for their wives' day, which is January 31st. Beloved Wives' Day, they call it. Husbands are supposed to tell their wife that they love them and show her, that in their expression. So there's, again, different ways different cultures will express their love for one another. Last thing is arranged marriages. An arranged marriage is when the parents or relatives choose the children's partner. So love is expected to develop or grow over time. This practice is not as common in the U.S. as it is worldwide. Here and in other Western countries, people may typically get engaged first and then tell their friends and families. But in other countries, arranged marriages are the norm because respect for parents' wishes, family traditions, the kin group, and the well-being of the community are more important than the individual's feelings. People in many societies think that American beliefs about dating and romance is at least as strange as many Americans feel that arranged marriages are. So here's some examples. In Sri Lanka, men and women fall in love and tell their parents about their choices. So that's becoming much more common where the children are involved in who the arranged partner will be. In Turkey, about 52% of women live in arranged marriages, but there's a trend toward love among younger, more educated, and urban women. In Canada, second-generation Muslim Pakistani women are actually rebelling against the arranged marriage. So others are participating willingly because they can't find a suitable partner on their own, or they believe that their parents know what's best for them. Studies of arranged marriages in India and Bangladesh show that love gradually increases and grows stronger. So those who deny arranged marriages in countries like Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, they really suffer consequences. They might be stoned, burned to death, hanged, or shot because there's a sense of dishonor brought onto the family if this marriage is denied. And these things are usually done by a male family member first, and then also by men in the community. So it's a very shameful thing if the children do not abide by the parents in these particular countries. So what have we learned? We've learned that love changes how we feel about ourselves. Love creates choices in the ways we may find happiness. There can be constraints or obstacles too, in that love can be jealous or controlling. And love is also essential to human development and growth. So when we see that there's a lack of this, we thrive for it. We desire it. We want, that social interaction at that level. So do love and sex go together? Well, not always, and we will see in the next chapter when we talk about sexuality.